Welcome to our lecture on evolutionary biology. Today, we are going to embark on a fascinating journey through time to explore paleontological evidences of evolution. We will uncover how the Earth itself acts as a massive historical library, preserving the secrets of ancient life in its rock layers. By understanding the geological timescale and examining the classic fossil record of the horse, you will see firsthand how species adapt and transform over millions of years. Let us dive into the ultimate historical record of life on Earth. To begin our exploration, imagine you are wandering through an ancient, abandoned library. In this library, the books stacked at the very bottom were placed there first, making them the oldest, while the ones at the top are the most recent additions. In evolutionary biology, the Earth itself is this magnificent library, and the layers of rock beneath our feet are the books. Paleontology is the study of the fossils hidden within these rock layers. Understanding this geological timescale is absolutely crucial because it gives us the when of evolution, proving that life has progressed from simple single-celled organisms to complex creatures over billions of years. Now that we understand how rock layers form a relative timeline, we must ask, how do we know exactly how old these fossils are? This brings us to the concept of absolute dating. Scientists use a powerful technique called radiometric dating to assign precise ages to these ancient bones. This technique relies on a fascinating natural phenomenon. Certain unstable radioactive elements trapped in the rocks naturally decay into stable elements over time. Because this decay happens at a constant, predictable rate, it acts like an internal geological clock. Without this method, we would just have a random collection of bones with no real idea of which animal came first. This predictable decay we just discussed can be expressed using a beautiful and powerful mathematical law. Conceptually, this formula comes from the fact that the number of atoms decaying per unit of time is proportional to the total number of atoms present. Let us break down the equation. N of T represents the final amount of the radioactive isotope still remaining in the fossil today. N0 is the initial amount of that isotope present when the rock first formed. The letter E is the base of the natural logarithm. The Greek letter lambda is the decay constant, which tells us how quickly a specific element decays. Finally, T represents the time that has elapsed. As the time T increases, the remaining amount of the isotope decreases exponentially. While the decay constant lambda is essential for our calculations, it can be a bit abstract. This leads us to a more intuitive concept, the half-life. The half-life is simply the exact amount of time it takes for exactly half of the radioactive atoms in a sample to decay into a stable form. We can easily convert between the half-life and the decay constant using this direct formula. Lambda equals the natural logarithm of 2 divided by the half-life, denoted as T sub 1/2. The natural log of 2 is a constant, approximately 0.693. If an isotope has a very long half-life, its decay constant, lambda, will be very small. This means the element decays very slowly, which is absolutely perfect for dating incredibly old dinosaur bones. Before we move on, let us see this math in action with a concrete example. Imagine you unearth a saber-toothed cat bone. The lab reports it contains only 25% of its original carbon-14. We know the half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. We need to find the exact age, T. First, we calculate the decay constant, lambda, by dividing 0.693 by the half-life, giving us 0.000121 per year. Next, we substitute our known values into the main decay equation. The initial amount, n0, cancels out on both sides. To get time out of the exponent, we take the natural logarithm of both sides. Finally, dividing by the negative decay constant isolates t, giving us 11,454 years. Physically, this makes perfect sense, as 25% remaining means exactly 2 half-lives have passed. Now that we have calculated an age mathematically, let us visualize what this radioactive decay actually looks like. Here we have a classic exponential decay curve. Look at the vertical axis, which represents the percentage of the original radioactive isotope remaining in the fossil. The horizontal axis represents time, measured in the number of half-lives that have passed. Notice how the curve starts at 100%. After exactly 1 half-life, the curve drops steeply to 50%. After a second half-life, it halves again to 25%, which perfectly matches the saber-toothed cat example we just solved. This diagram beautifully illustrates the predictable, continuous nature of radioactive decay, proving why it is such a reliable clock for evolutionary biologists. With our geological clock established, we can now track specific evolutionary journeys. This brings us to one of the most complete and beautiful examples in the fossil record, the phylogeny of the horse. Think about how human transportation evolved, from heavy steam trains to sleek sports cars to meet new demands. Similarly, the horse lineage, spanning roughly 55 million years, shows progressive adaptation to a changing planet. The record begins in the Eocene epoch with Eohippus, a tiny dog-sized animal that lived in dense forests. This complete fossil record is incredibly important because it provides undeniable, tangible proof of macroevolution, showing us exactly how a small forest browser transformed over millions of years. Understanding where the horse started naturally leads us to ask how and why it changed so drastically. Over millions of years, the Earth's climate cooled significantly. The dense, soft-leafed forests gave way to wide-open, grassy plains. To survive in this new environment, the horse lineage underwent dramatic morphological changes. Their overall body size increased massively to deter predators. Their side toes gradually reduced until they were left with a single, strong central hoof, perfectly adapted for fast running on hard plains. Furthermore, their teeth lengthened and developed complex ridges. This was a crucial adaptation for grinding tough, abrasive grasses. These trends perfectly illustrate how natural selection shapes an organism's anatomy to fit its specific ecological niche. Observing these physical changes is fascinating, but as scientists, we also want to measure how fast these changes occurred. This leads us to a metric called the Darwin. Conceptually, 1 Darwin represents a change in a physical trait by a factor of e per million years. Let us look at the formula. The variable r is the evolutionary rate. x1 represents the initial measurement of a physical trait, like tooth height in the older ancestral fossil. x2 is the measurement of that exact same trait in the younger descendant fossil. We use the natural logarithm for both measurements to account for proportional changes, rather than just absolute size. Finally, delta t is the time interval between the two fossils, strictly measured in millions of years. If a trait grows larger, r is positive. If it shrinks, r is negative. Now that we have our formula, let us apply it to a real example from the horse fossil record. We want to calculate the evolutionary rate of tooth crown height, a crucial adaptation for eating grass. We are given an early ancestor, Mesohippus, from 35 million years ago with a 10-millimeter molar. A later descendant, Meryhippus, from 15 million years ago, has a 30-millimeter molar. First, we find our time difference, delta t, which is 20 million years. Next, we plug our values into the Darwin formula. We take the natural log of 30 and subtract the natural log of 10. This gives us 1.099, representing the proportional change. Dividing this by 20 million years gives us a final rate of 0.055 Darwins. Physically, this means the horse's teeth grew by roughly 5.5% every million years. Having calculated the exact rate of these changes, let us now look at the physical evidence side by side. This diagram maps the evolutionary lineage of the horse. On the left, the vertical axis represents time moving forward from bottom to top. Notice the 4 key stages: Eohippus, Mesohippus, Merychippus, and finally the modern Equus. Look at the 4-foot column. You can clearly see the gradual reduction of the side toes, culminating in the single, powerful hoof of the modern horse at the top. Now look at the molar tooth column. The teeth transform from small, simple structures at the bottom into the long, deeply ridged grinders at the top. This visual perfectly reinforces the mathematical rate we just calculated, showing a continuous, measurable process of adaptation. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, so let us summarize our key takeaways. First, we learned that the Earth's rock layers and the fossils within them serve as a massive historical library. Second, by using the mathematics of radiometric dating, we can assign absolute, precise ages to these fossils, giving us a rigorous timeline. Third, the incredibly complete fossil record of the horse provides undeniable proof of macroevolution, showing how species adapt to changing environments. Finally, we saw that evolution is not just observable, but measurable, using tools like the Darwin to quantify the exact rate of physical change. You now have a solid understanding of how paleontology proves the magnificent history of life on Earth.